Hello, everyone, and welcome to our Iowa Organic Association webinar for today. It is on weed management for row crops on Shriver Farm, and I will say that this is one of the more popular topics that we have had. So as we looked at what we wanted to do our topics on, we put it out to the membership and looked at our feedback from various field days and other webinars we've hosted, and this was one that was very popular. So we are excited to be doing that. I do want to mention right from the get-go that this is hosted, of course, by the Iowa Organic Association. Also, we receive funding, of course, from the Midwest Transition to Organic Partnership Program. So if you've seen us at any of our field days, at our annual meeting or anything like that, we've been talking about the Transition to Organic Partnership Program, which is TOP. That is a program that the USDA is doing for another 2.5 years or so now, where they are encouraging farms and helping farmers make the transition to organic. One of the ways that you are able to have that help is through a mentorship program, the TOP mentorship program. So that pairs experienced organic farmers with beginning organic farmers. So if they have questions about things just like this, weed management, record keeping, your certification process, they have somebody that they can go to and find those answers. We have mentors available everywhere from row crops to vegetable production to livestock, dairy, and we also have current mentor-mentee partners going on right now from dairy that's transitioning to organic, field crops that are transitioning to organic, vegetable production. So it runs the gamut. I am really excited about it personally because I'm a first generation farmer, or better yet, one generation removed from the farm. And I have relied heavily on mentors over the last 16 years that I've been doing this. So I'm excited to be part of that and offer that. Just a little bit about the Iowa Organic Association before we get going here. We are a statewide nonprofit organization. We are committed to organic education, advocacy, and cooperation. And our membership is really a diverse community of Iowa's organic farmers, gardeners, food and farm businesses, organization, advocates, and consumers who are devoted to building a more sustainable Iowa. So that is who we are. All of that is fleshed out in farmer to farmer field days, working with consumers and producers to help get organic into as many places as possible in Iowa, and just supporting the industry in Iowa. So we've got a lot going on. If you look at this next slide here, you can see we have 4 more webinars coming up. In 2 weeks on February 12th, we have direct marketing for the organic farmer. That's with Carly Zerke from Sweet Season Farm up in Northeast Iowa. On February 26th, we have robotic milking on an organic dairy with Jason Wells from Southeast Iowa. We have soil health for organic farms, and then we're going to close it out at the end of March with organic apples and cider production. So if you would like to check out any of those, you can go to our website and find all of those details. But 3 minutes of me talking is plenty. I would like to welcome Scott. Scott from Jefferson, Iowa is going to share about his farm a little bit today, about weed management on his farm. This is a topic, like I said, that is like one of the most requested things. It's always one of our most requested field days and most attended field days, and same with webinars. And I think that the thing is that we just like to see what other people are doing and learn from them. It doesn't mean that anybody has one answer or the silver bullet, but we just learn a lot from seeing what's working and what isn't working on other farms. So Scott, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, thanks, Ethan. And you're absolutely right. This is always a kind of a hot topic, and the reason is because it is probably the most difficult part of organic farming, row crop farming anyway. And you took the words out of my mouth. There is no magic bullet. I think sometimes we're at the mercy of Mother Nature. But I will, kind of go through what we do and what I think is important, and hopefully, you can pick up what you can from it. We started transitioned to organic back in 1998. So we've been doing this quite a little while. It took us about 10 years to get all of our 2,000 acres certified. I mean, we just did certain, farms, a couple farms the first year, and a few more farms every year after that for a while until we were all organic. We farm about 2,000 acres. It's mostly corn and beans. Our rotation is corn, soybeans. Well, it's actually now it's soybeans, corn, and then a small grain. So 40% corn, 40% soybeans, and about 20% small grains. I guess that's kind of it, in a nutshell, just what we do. Go to the next slide. I think there's two primary methods of weed control, and one is kind of your cultural practices, which is everything maybe but what you do out in the field when the crop's growing. Things like crop rotation and stuff. The things that you can do, and these are important. These are things that you need to think about and kind of plan ahead and everything. And then the other is the mechanical practices, the steel in the field. And I think the primary goal there is to create, from planting, is to create the largest separation between your crop growth and your weed size. I'll go more to that. Go ahead, next slide. Cultural practices I'll hit on a little bit, but I'm mostly going to focus on the mechanical things. But again, you got to do everything you can to have a vigorous and fast growing crop, and that's going to be what gives you the most success. And again, sometimes weather is just an issue there, but getting the crop planted, even emergence, because if you have the crop side, if you have different size corn plants growing than what you do as, say, cultivating or rotary hoeing, you're always having to manage what you're doing to the smallest plant out there. And so either that or you may tear it out, those small plants. So, but then you may be waiting on those small plants when you should have been in the field doing something, if that makes sense. So anyway, anything you could do to have the best crop growing that you can is probably one of the most important things you can do. Crop rotation is important. Like I said, I mentioned what our crop rotation is. We do have, the small grains are not just super profitable. We probably do them for two reasons, but one of them is weed control. I do think it gives a break in the weed cycles. It gives you a different time of year where you can do some tillage and kill some weeds. That it just kind of breaks things up and helps that overall weed seed bank. The other reason we're doing it is after our small grains, we're planting rye and then using that so we can plant that rye early and use it then the next year. And we're roller crimping rye and planting soybeans into the rye and roller crimping the rye. So we're doing that so that we get the rye planted early. So that'd be the other reason we're doing the small grains.
I have a quick question. Maybe this kind of that came in from Margaret that kind of maybe fits in with this. You run soybean, corn, small grain. Is that what you said?
Yes. Wait.
And it ends
yes.
Rather than corn, soybeans, small grain, because of the roller crimping.
That's because of the roller crimping. Yeah, it kind of flip flop. So we're planting. Even to start that out, maybe after if you start out with small grains, then we're planting the rye and then soybeans, and as a cover crop, and then the rye, or we're planting soybeans. So it's small grain, soybeans, corn. And there's some things I would rather plant our small grains into soybean stubble, but this kind of forces us to plant the small grains into corn stalks, and I'd prefer not to. And I think maybe we take a little yield hit. I haven't really seen it too bad, I'll be honest, but conventional wisdom has always been you'd plant your small grains after soybeans. But in order that we could, plant that rye in early September. We've kind of flip-flopped that around.
All right. Perfect. Thank you.
Okay. Some other things to think about, your fertility, but maybe some soil amendments. I've always felt, foxtail is our biggest problem of any of our weeds, and that having a high calcium, a high available calcium is supposed to help with that, the foxtail. And so we've put out gypsum over the years. We kind of, many years ago, we did a lot of gypsum. We kind of moved into doing SO4, which is a gypsum, pelletized gypsum. And then even the last couple of years now, we've been doing a product called polysulfate. And it's going to have the available calcium like the SO4, but it also has some potassium, and we're kind of finding we need the extra potassium that maybe we're not getting enough with our manures and things. So anyway, I think that can help. Our calcium levels in our soil tests are super high. So you just think, boy, why do we need all that? But we've also done some water soluble tests and stuff, and that calcium isn't necessarily readily available. So that's kind of why we're trying to maybe spoon feed, some calcium in along the way. But I think that's something to think about also when you're doing your soil tests, just what's available, even though your soil test says it's all there, but whether it's really helping you or not it might be questionable. Our cover crops, I think, are a good thing to have also. They improve your soil tilth. You're out there tilling up. I think they smother the weeds. And then there's also the allelopathy that you get out of rye and some other of the small grains. So I think it just seems like the cover crops seem to help a little bit too. I think understanding weeds is important. Know your weed enemy, which ones grow and germinate, what time of the year. So in other words, I think if you understand your weeds and why you have them, then that might give you clues to, better combat those weeds. Next slide. Ethan, too, if you see questions come up, I'm glad to answer them while we're going. I probably won't try to watch that myself. So if you see something, just holler at me. So the mechanical practices, I'm sorry.
Oh, I was going to say, we did have one that just came in before we jump off the rotations real quick, and we'll have time for questions at the end as well. But yeah, we can jump in. Do you plant rye before the second rotation of soybeans since it follows corn?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, we do. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yep. Okay. Pre-plant tillage. It's pretty standard stuff, I think. We're going to try to till the ground, 7 to 10, 14 days before planting, just knowing that there's probably some weeds growing at that point. So we, kill some weeds, but we don't want things to get too rank we don't plant corn till middle of May. We don't plant the beans till, end of May to 1st of June. So we don't want to wait till the middle of May and just have all these rank, whether it's a rank cover crop. It's really cover crop too. We don't want that to get too out of control, but if it is just weeds, we don't want them to get, just out of control. So, we're probably doing some tillage end of April, 1st of May. That maybe gives it a little more time to then have another weed flush. And so we try to do another tillage pass right before planting, or, depending on the moisture levels and things, we might till the same day we plant. Run a field cultivator or something. Then we have planting. After planting, that's when the game begins. And, so yeah, I guess just know that as you plant, you're creating more work ahead of yourself. When you don't plant, things don't move along so fast. But once you plant, you got to be ready to go. We're doing blind cultivation, which is either a rotary hoe, a tine harrow, We also have a thing called a rotation that we're doing some blind cultivation. I'll get into that. But and depending on weather conditions and temperature, just we try to do that obviously before the crops, close enough to the ground surface that you're going to do any damage to it. But that's generally 3 to 5 days after planting. And then also a non-row specific cultivation is after emergence. Again, same 3 pieces of equipment: the rotary hoe, the tine weeder, and the rotation. But you've got that window of just right before the crop emerges to the point that you have to kind of wait when it's small, that you're not doing a lot of damage to it, before you can do the after emergence pass there. And then we've got row specific cultivation between the rows. So this is cultivators and things like that. I've got different types of cultivators. We'll go into that. I'll say that blind cultivation and the after emergence cultivation is just probably the most important ones you can do, because then once you're doing the in between the row cultivations, it's really hard to improve if you've already had a bad start, and sometimes you just get a bad start because of weather. That's usually the problem if you do have a bad start. But you don't really improve it, you just kind of maintain what you have. And so those early passes are really critical. Go to the next slide. Okay, so these are the things I call for non-row specific cultivation. And the rotary hoe, I don't have a picture of it here. Everybody probably knows what a rotary hoe looks like. We use a rotary hoe a lot, and I think these other, and I'll say it's probably the least effective in one pass as these other 2 things, but we can cover a lot of acres. We don't have plugging problems. There's other advantages, but I'll say they probably do less for weed control than the tine weeder or the Einbach rotation. The Einbach rotation is in the bottom left-hand corner. Those fingers are super stiff. They don't bend at all. I've got some videos here coming up, but they're at a slight angle, and so they act a little bit like a wheel rake on a hay rake, and they're pretty aggressive. They're probably more aggressive than even the tine weeder, which is in the upper right-hand picture. Go to the next slide.
This
okay.
video.
Yeah, this. Go to the next slide.
Okay.
I think
we'll see if the videos work through.
Yeah, this is a picture of the rotation. You can see they're at a slight angle. Go to the next slide. I think it's a video. You can kind of see it in action, and then see if you can start the video.
That would be the question.
Yeah, they're not. Let me do something else here.
Let me share it differently and see if we can get the video. Go ahead. We did have a question, and maybe you can talk about this while I'm trying to see if we get the video. What type of tillage are you doing beforehand? Planting.
Right before planting, it's usually a soil finisher, field cultivator or soil finisher, just to get a nice seed bed, and that's provided you don't have, and you kind of got to get it ready for that. I think, in other words, you can't have a real rank cover crop. I mean, a soil finisher or field cultivator is not going to be enough. So that the pass and there may be even a pass 4 weeks before if we're not going to cover crop down, but we've got a Lemkin disc that's probably our tool that we're using to really take down a cover crop, and it hopefully is preparing the soil to the point that the soil finisher works 2 weeks later. But that's pretty much what we're doing. But there may be even if there's a pretty strong cover crop, there may be 2 passes with that lemkin and then the soil finisher. It just depends.
Okay. Here I can we can kind of do this the odd way. I got slow farm internet out here, but here's this is
Okay.
Um the rotation weeder you're talking about.
Yeah, yeah. Actually, even that one above it, I think, it's probably better. Go to the slide. What? Yeah. Let me ask you something. Can I share my screen?
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, hold on a second. Now, we'll see if it's any better.
Go ahead and you should be able to share your screen.
Does that did that work?
Yeah. Yep, yep.
Better. It's that gives you a pretty good idea of what it's doing. It's really pretty aggressive, and we really liked it at first. Because it was aggressive, but it also I don't know if you have this in. Well, maybe it is. I don't know, Ethan. Could you see that?
Yeah. Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
It's
I don't know if you could tell, but I mean there was bean plants flying out of the row that you
sure.
when you see them getting a few, you know you're probably getting more than a few. But like I said, it's we've really kind of used this more almost in blind cultivation now than anything because we're not as worried about doing crop damage. Um, but it also moves the dirt a little bit sideways. So depending on where those wheels, I think they're about 7 or 8 inches apart. If they're kind of over a row or beside a row, if your beans are small, you can actually push a little bit of dirt up on top of the row, and then it kind of messes up with how your cultivators work after that. If you've got like a mound of dirt right next to a row, the cultivator might push that dirt back up on or up onto the row. So anyway, we've got a little bit of disfavor on that. Oh, that is.
Do you want me to go back to the
Yeah. Either that or I don't know. I can.
you can just go on there if you
Go
just want
through
to play
my
from your
slides.
side. Yep.
Um, and it's pretty much the same. Oops. Gives you a little different view of what it's doing, but you can tell it's working those rows pretty hard, especially the one to the left. Probably enough of that. So I don't, but anyway, that or our tine weeder, we try to, if we can, we blind cultivate with either the rotation or the tine weeder. Just again, simply you can still go pretty fast, and I think it does a more complete job of maybe ripping the weeds out the little, and again, it's key that you get out there, even if you don't see. I mean, and even if you're going to find weeds if you go dig, but you're not necessarily going to find weeds if you just drive out there with on a four-wheeler and look around. But the time to get those weeds is really before you even see them, or they're just in that white root hair stage, because that's when you can just be most effective in killing them. The row specific cultivation, I kind of break it up into 3 things: the early
If you
season
wanna
cultivation.
if you want to hit slideshow
Yeah, where
or
is that? I was up
upper
here.
right, maybe there.
Oh,
There you go.
there we go. Yeah, that's nice.
Right. And then just a couple quick questions. On the like, are you doing how many of you are out there hitting these weeding passes? How many employees or family
Oh,
members
well,
are you?
okay. Yeah, that's a good question. I've got 3 full-time guys and myself during this, well, really year round, but during this time of the year. And we have enough tractors. We can all be out in the field doing something. And so, I've got multiple pieces of equipment, so we can be out there doing it all at all 4 of us. I'd say it's not that often we're out there. It's pretty often that we're out there probably with 3 tractors and 3 pieces of equipment, but not 4. But there's a couple times of the year that we're out there with 4 pieces of equipment. And all of our equipment's 40 feet wide, 16-row planter and 16-row cultivators and 40-foot.
All right, perfect. Thank you.
Stuff like that. Yep. Was there anything else?
No. Well, I guess how deep are your tillage passes when you're doing those?
The pre-plant, just 3 inch. I mean, again, it depends a little bit, but I mean, we're trying to, and it's something you sort of got to think about. Like if you got to get deep enough if you're killing a cover crop, I'd say 3 to 4 inches, and then say 2 to 3 inches with the field cultivator if you're running that, just in general. But
awesome, great. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. The row specific cultivation, I've kind of broke it up. We break it up into and we have cultivators for each situation so that we're not having to do a whole lot of adjusting to cultivators. But we've got early season, mid season, and basically a lay-by cultivators that we work with. The early season cultivators we have, we're going to run when the crop's 3 to 8 inches tall. We have a buffalo cultivator, and I've got hybrid there. We've also put, we've hybridized this buffalo cultivator, and then we've added, and it's a buffalo add-on, but it's a double disc hiller. So we've got 2 discs, and they're pulling dirt away from the row. And I've got pictures. I'll show this. And then in the very back, we added finger weeders, an Einbach finger weeder. We welded a fitting or a weldment that they give you to the main bar and attach the finger weeders so that we're trying to get some. Let me go down here. Okay, so there's your double disc hillers. In between each of those 4 discs, right down the middle of those 4 discs is where the row is. And so we're pulling dirt away from the row and leaving 5 to 6 inch, almost a little bit of a ridge right there. It'll create a little bit of a furrow there next to that where the row is and that ridge. This is looking from the front of the cultivator, so you got the gauge wheels kind of at the sticking out in the front of the picture, and then you can see the finger weeders behind. So those finger weeders are kind of they do weed control almost 2 different ways. They're kind of neat, and sometimes it just depends on the soil structure and things you've got going on. But it will actually kind of grab a little bit of a dirt and push it into the row, and then the rubber fingers will kind of smush that dirt and cover up things in the row. But then the rubber fingers can also explode that dirt where you've got a ridge on both sides and the crop growing up in between those not really a ridge but a furrow, and it kind of just breaks up that soil and churns it right there, and so it's doing some weed control in the row. There's another picture of the finger weeders. Actually, the row is, you look at the left-hand side of the picture where you've got about half of a finger and a whole finger in the picture. The row is in between those. It's not where the fingers are pointed up. You can see the coulter there. That's right in the center of the space between the rows. And those fingers that are pointing, those steel fingers that are underneath the yellow rubber fingers, that's what drives those finger weeders. So when you're on the ground, those are on the ground. And so when you drive forward, that's what actually causes those fingers to turn. If they weren't there, they would just drag along the ground. And that's where you get a little bit of action really with those, and you'll kind of smooch some dirt into the row also, we found. So here's a video of it running. Let's stop that. This the reason I took this video was actually, you can see in the middle there's one of those rotation tines instead of fingers, and it's running right over the row, and it's just about destroying that row. So in this little bit cloddy situation, and that's maybe where that finger weeder isn't going to work as well. So this was kind of a trial that we were doing, or an experiment. They had that attachment that I could just put in right instead of the finger weeders. This was an Einbach rotation thing, but you can also see the finger weeders, what they're doing there. Whoops. What I'm doing now. Did that eliminate the noise for you guys? Well, you can't hear me either.
I can hear you, but it looks like the video's muted. Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's better, because that's just I don't have to talk over it now.
Yep.
I'm going to start that over, but this just gives you an idea of what we could go in for first cultivation on corn, and you can see the amount of. But you see, kind of in the row, that there's not as much. I'm going to stop that. You can kind of see alongside the row. Can you see my cursor?
Yes, we can.
Okay. See, like this row especially, alongside the row, there's not as much grass as in the middles. And I think the reason for that was we have a rotary hoe that is actually just 15-inch wide over the row, and then it leaves the middles. And so we might have run that in one of our earlier passes. So there's a few less weeds there. But you can see it's a pretty grassy situation. I'll continue to play. It takes around what it looks behind. But cleans it up pretty good. That's just a picture, but again, that's just a kind of a look at what it can look. You can see what we've got, where we've been, and where we have to go. Quite a bit of difference there. Same thing here. These are by far not very ideal situations. I mean, we hope to not be in this situation, probably, typically. Another one of our, I'm going to just, we have a Glencoe, it's just an old Glencoe standard 3-shank, C-shank cultivator. We've got tunnel shields. We keep the shovels pretty close on it. I'd say at least 5, but less than 5-inch probably between the shovels where the rows are. We also have an S-tine cultivator, and again, just this one we really haven't used much at all. We've got, but we've used it in years where it's been wet, and this one you can kind of get out there when it's a little wetter than maybe these other cultivators, just because the S-tine shovels are just pretty thin and don't necessarily move, or a lot of dirt, or they won't slab nearly as bad. there's a picture of that Glencoe cultivator. I mean, there's lots of types of cultivators like this out there. I mean, it's, like I said, just pretty standard cultivator. This is that Danish time cultivator with the lots of little other sweeps. No shields or anything. It won't hardly throw any dirt into the row. The shovels you can see are pretty small, and some of that's a duck's foot type shovel, and these are just chisels here. Jumping into the mid-season cultivation, we've got a couple of 1830 international cultivators, standard 3-shank cultivator. Just it'd be a lot like the Glencoe, but we don't have shields, and we don't have and the spacing's more like a 7-inch gap, because there we're going to try to throw some dirt into the row. So we're going to want to be able to grab some dirt, throw it into the row, and go at a pretty good clip, and try to cover some ground with this. This is kind of the point where you're either going to just sort of maintaining, and if you've had grass escape from day one, it's going to be too tall at this point to really even cover it up. But we also have a flamer. I got a picture of that, but it's got burners on each side of the row. They mostly point back and into the row. We've got side shields to kind of keep some of the heat in and maybe be a little more effective. We're going 3 to 5 miles an hour. Uses about 7 gallons of propane per acre. Sometimes if we've had, if there's a fair amount of grass there, we'll hit it with the flamer, and then say before the 1830, and then maybe 2 days later follow up with the 1830 when that grass has kind of gotten wilted and half dead or dead, and cover it up. It at that point you can cover up that grass a whole lot easier if you flamed it. There's the 1830, again, just pretty standard old cultivator stuff. This is the flamer. The row is, if you can see my cursor, there's the row. We also have, I think we've since this picture was taken, we've taken these shovels. It had one center shovel just because you're not flaming the middles. And we'll try to do something in the middles, but it's just like anything. When you're trying to do too much with one thing, you couldn't get it set. If you were setting the flamer the way you wanted it, that middle shovel wasn't doing what you wanted. If you set the middle shovel, so it was doing something, then the flamer wasn't in the position you wanted it. So I think, took those shanks out, and it's just a flamer now. Those pegs on top of those side shields go, well, you can kind of see off to the left how deep they are. But those pegs on top, we also have covers. So if we were doing small corn, we could put a top on it and really hold that heat in there and do some good. We've kind of found over the years that, if the corn's 2-3 inches tall, you really set it back, and your grass is there. You can do a nice job flaming the grass, but corn's a grass too. And if you don't kill it, you're not necessarily killing that grass either. So it'll burn them both down to the ground, and the corn will usually grow back faster and better, but we just haven't seen the, I don't know, the differential in, it's like you set them both back and they both come back. And the grass, it's just like the corn, that growing point's below the ground, and until you can get it at a later stage. So what we try to do is flame when the corn is 12 inches tall and that grass maybe 5 or 6 inches tall. Knock that, kind of wilt that grass back as best you can, and then cover it up with the cultivator. Here's a picture of, and this is where my cursor is, right in the middle and to the left. This has not been flamed. I think I left a pass, and this was flamed probably a day or two before. This will come out of it fine. It looks kind of ill, but this grass is here to stay if you don't do something about it. Again, if you can see my cursor, I'm circling this.
are you flaming every year, and then did you flame and then come back and cultivate on this?
We're um, we're not we haven't flamed the last 2 years actually. I think you'll find I won't say it's just a rescue, but really if you I think weather has so much to do with it. But we've had these dry years these last 3 years, and so we've been able to do our blind cultivation and our we've been able to stay on top of the weeds in these drier years when we've had these wet. And I say, I know people in northern Iowa just had a heck of a time with water last year, but we didn't, and so we pretty well were able to stay on top of it. So anyway, it's when you have those periods when you just couldn't get in and do the weed control you wanted to do, and you have a grass situation like this that or worse. So that's when the flamer's been extra handy, and yeah, it's every time we've used it in this taller corn, we're probably using it first, knocking the grass back, and then trying to cover it up as best we can with the cultivator.
Okay.
When the grass is this thick, right, like right here, this is just maybe an exception to, but even the flamer is only going to get the outside edge of that because this grass will protect the grass in the middle from getting the flames. And we have flamed twice before. That's if it's really bad, I mean that's certainly something you can do.
Okay.
There's another look. That's basically the same location, just a little more of a close-up shot. Getting to the late season cultivation, probably the simplest and easiest, and at this point your year is pretty much made, but we do try to get out there as late as possible, when you can still drive through the crop. But I think things we kind of watch for then is we have a single sweep cultivator. We used to try to make those shares on the as wide as possible, but we felt like maybe we were trimming roots, so we did go to a narrower shovel, and we put ridging wings on it so we could throw a lot of dirt in the row. The corn's big enough and heavy enough that it'll take that dirt and cover up some grass. That's a picture of our of that cultivator. You can see the shares there, and a point in the middle, and there's your ridging wings on the side. I've got I'll say tips and tricks. I mean, your equipment maintenance is important. We go through every cultivator and everything either in the spring or during the winter, so that when it is time to go, we can go. And that's, I think, really important. Don't put it off. I mean, you always think you're gonna, I'll have a couple of days here and there, and then pretty soon you're like, I should be out there today, but I've got, if you got a half a day or a day's worth of maintenance on it, you can really miss an opportunity to get it ready. We've done things, I think having things kind of rigid, and these old cultivators, and you can, not anymore so much, but 20 years ago we were buying these pretty cheap, and but they'd be partly wore out, so we replace a lot of bushings. If we have a cultivator that's designed to be just a early cultivation, so that corn is always going to be less than the 12 inches or 14 inches tall, then we've put like a brace between the back of the row units in order so that they're not kind of able to wobble around, knowing that brace, if you had corn that was 2 feet tall, it would be knocking the corn down. But if you're always going to be in short corn with it, there's nothing preventing that brace from being there. We put extra. We're running 16 row equipment, so those cultivators are pretty big and heavy. They sag, and they also, as you're driving through the field, they pull back. So we've done some trussing to keep them from sagging. we've added maybe a bar, like have a double 7x7 bar, but then add another 7x7 bar in front of that to try to prevent that pullback as you're driving through the field. Because especially on cultivators, you'd be surprised, they'll pull back 3 or 4 inches. Well, then that change, if you have your row units and you're trying to be real close to the row, that changes your spacing, your 30-inch spacing on 30-inch rows. It changes that a little bit, and then all of a sudden your wings are maybe covering up a row here or there, and so having that rigid and kind of knowing those things. There's things we put on shovels that keep them from, if you get in situations where they're wanting to slab, we put like a bolt at an angle to the shank so that those slabs hit that angle and go to the ground rather than flying up. And then when they fly up, they'll land on your crop and cover up your crops. We in our wheel tracks or our cat tracks, sometimes we put a smaller shovel, because if you have, say, the regular size shovels, those tracks get pretty hard and then they don't go on the ground. So we've removed shovels, or we've had more like, maybe put an extra chisel, that kind of thing. So don't be afraid to modify to what kind of fits your situation, I guess is what I'm saying. All of our tractors have a hydraulic third link, and I just think that's probably the most important thing we did that so many years ago. You just take it for granted now, but those are really nice. You can adjust, how much you're digging, in the field as you're driving, and even adjust it in some parts of the field, you might put it down a little more, and then in other parts you might pick it up. But it makes hooking up and unhooking so much easier also. But it just gives you a lot of adjustment that's easy to do, because nobody wants to stop. I don't care if you're mowing your lawn and you see a plastic bottle there. What do you stop and pick it up, or do you just drive over it? Nobody wants to stop. So if you're going to stop to adjust your third link, you might do that once or twice, and then you're going to go. This just allows you to do a lot of that adjustment. We've had auto steer, RTK. That's pretty much all we do for, I'll say, guidance of, and we haven't used the camera systems. People tell me they're great, even with the RTK, that it's just that much better. And it probably is. I don't know. We've thought about it, and maybe we'll try that someday. I think it's one of those things. It'll be like the RTK. It's kind of like, once we got the RTK steering and everything, it's like, how do we ever live without it? We kind of thought getting it, that it was a luxury, and that, we all can drive straight. And I mean, you really can't drive straight if you've had auto steer, that. And maybe the camera system is just one step better. And it could be, but we haven't tried that yet. But I think the timing of it is just super important. And like I said, you got to get out there when you need to get out there. The early season work is the most important. If you have an opportunity, don't miss it. I mean, even if it's not an ideal condition, if you know it's going to rain the next day, you probably ought to be out there doing something. And that's the end of my presentation.
Yeah, if you want to go ahead and just
let's see, how do I?
You can stop share. If anybody has any questions, you can go ahead and I got it there.
Yeah, okay. There you go.
Go ahead and enter them in the Q&A box, but we do have a couple of them. What's your row spacing, and have you experimented with different widths?
Not in organic. Our row spacing is 30 inches. Right before we started going organic, we went to 20-inch corn, and I think we maybe had a 20-inch cultivator at one time or two, just when we were first starting. And our theory back then, I mean, we went back to the 30s. I mean, I even had one of the things that helped me a lot. I had an old farmer working for me. I mean, he cultivated, that's just the way they farmed when he farmed. And he even felt that a 38-inch row or 40-inch rows were better because that's where your weeds are. They're in the rows. So, if you're not taking a yield hit going to say 36-inch rows from 30s, you're going to have less weeds because you have less rows. I think the 30-inch was kind of a nice, what do you say, medium, for us on that. I know there are people doing 20-inch rows, but anyway, that's what we're doing is 30s. Also, the equipment is just more common, so it's easier to find and less expensive.
Sure. When you talked a little bit about soil amendments and things like that, how do you incorporate fertilizer and amendments, soil amendments?
Yeah, everything we're doing is in the fall. We're not trying to do anything in row or during the season. It's just too busy during the season, I think. So our fertilizer and our amendments we're putting on in the fall, and if we can, we work them in. They're not the type that have to be worked in, actually.
About the question about the hydraulic center link, is there a brand that you're
using? Yeah, it's Gnuse. It's Gnuse.
Yeah, sure.
That's just who and we've had these. I mean, shoot, I think some of them got to be 20, 25 years old, and never had a problem with them. They come with a valve of some sort that if say your hydraulic line breaks going to the third link, that it doesn't just drop on the ground, or it doesn't, it won't fall on you. So it's got a little safety thing in it, and they just work good.
Good deal. Next question. Do you adjust the depth of your soybean planting the year following corn to widen the time window for blind cultivation?
I would just say that we probably plant a little deeper than maybe the conventional folks. I mean, we're not planting an inch to an inch and a half. We're probably planting at least an inch and a half, but I say close. I mean, 2 to and then maybe even 2.5 inches on soybeans. And that's partly for that reason to give us a little bit of a larger window for blind cultivation. But on the same hand, it's not. And I've heard people say they plant 3 inches deep, just maybe to help that situation. But again, I think that's a happy medium there.
Sure. Have you ever had problems with cutworms in your corn?
I don't think so. It's kind of funny because I know Margaret's asked me this, and people, and sometimes I don't know. We're just so busy doing everything else we're doing that I don't have time, and I should take the scout for those things.
If you don't look, you don't have them, right?
Well, yeah. If you don't find them, or if you don't look, you can't find them, and if you can't find them, you don't have them. But I don't think so. The only real pest we probably had has been army worms that we probably didn't kill the cover crop early enough, and it was pretty green yet when we were working it and planting, and I think that was the issue with the army worms. And that was spring, and we've had fall army worms also in some cover crops. Anyway.
Couple questions here. Talked a lot about tillage. Do you worry about or assess soil erosion or soil structure, organic matter, soil organisms, microbes, things like that? Is that something you're tracking, worried about?
Yeah, I always think about that because I mean, we try to do as little tillage as possible, but he's absolutely right. It's probably more tillage than you'd like, but I do think the cover crop is, let's say it's 2 steps forward and it's 1 step back with the extra tillage. I think we get, I don't see where we have the erosion that say our conventional neighbors seem to have that don't have cover crops. And I really believe that the organic soil, I mean, the longer it's organic, it just has better soil structure and it holds together better and everything. But that's why and he mentioned the roller crimper. That's why we're trying to do that at least 1 in 5 years, where we do go almost a whole year without any tillage. Uh, and I'm looking at this. I mean, I haven't really tried any. I just don't understand how the no-till corn works very well, but I know some people are doing it and saying they're successful at it, and I'll try it someday when I think it'll work. Uh, but so it is something to think
Yes.
about. But I think what we're doing just overall organically and everything, it's like I said, and I know Kathleen Dellett's research at Iowa State has shown um, that I think the soil health aspects of an organic system is, and I don't know, I should probably quote this, but just as good as almost a no-till system that's conventional. That we're doing a lot of damage with chemicals and things like that also. So again, it's.
And in your 1 in 5 year roller crimping, how's that worked for you? The success of the roller crimping?
Um, Sometimes really good. I think one big step we made was getting to where we planted that rye early. I mean, and we've been doing it for like 7 years, I think. But I mean, the first couple of years was really a learning curve, and I'd say a disaster across the board. And then after that, we had some hit or miss, and then one year we had where it was all real good, and we got to where we're planting that rye in September. I think that you just if you wait until after your corn or soybean crop harvest, you're just not getting enough fall growth to have that ground fully covered in, say, mid to early April. It still grows tall, and I still think you can get the pounds of biomass, but if you don't have that ground completely shaded, say by the middle of April, I think that's where your weeds will start to grow even before that rye gets to that 6 foot tall stage. So anyway, that early planting's helped. And then this past year, there was some that we planted really early, we had a fantastic fall for rye growth and a fantastic spring this, a year ago. And it wasn't as good as it was the year before. So I don't know. I mean, I'm still figuring it out, but we're going to continue to do it. I think there's advantages. I think it'll always have a little bit of yield drag to it, but it really helps with our workload during the summer. And I think in certain situations it'll do, and I've seen it do better than our conventional tillage is not a guarantee. I mean, if you have a wet first half of June, those beans, I mean, they're just full of grass, and there's not a whole lot you can do about it. Where this system, you plant into the rye and you just walk away from it, and so in a wet year, I think you can have less weeds easily than a conventionally tilled soybean field, organic soybean field.
Question about certification a little bit. Who are you certifying through, and do you have any issues with not having that small grain cereal crop often or more often?
No issues. We certify through OCIA, Organic Crop Improvement Association, and no, I don't. I mean, I don't know of any certifiers that are going to have a problem with that.
And with the cover crops as well.
Yeah, I'm doing cover crops for sure before every soybean. I mean, I consider the roller crimper year a cover crop, but also the year that we're not roller crimping, and we definitely have rye there. But we're also putting out some rye before corn, and we just try to get that tilled in. I mean, it's not as good because you're planting it later in the fall, say after soybeans, not late in the fall, but it's not just a super lush cover crop. And I don't want it to be in the corn because we've kind of seen that get out of hand and rob nitrogen from the corn and that type of thing. But
yeah,
I mean, I don't know that whole crop rotation thing with certifiers is an interesting subject, and because they all look at it differently. I mean, the
case by case,
the rules are a little bit vague. I mean, I know people doing continuous corn. and
Mhm.
the cover crops and things like that, and their certifiers are fine.
Yeah.
So
Awesome. Couple more questions and we'll be cognizant of everyone's time here. But what are you using for fertility and how much?
our primary fertility is hog manure and chicken manure, and um, we're putting out about 6,000 gallons an acre of hog manure. It's an outside pit, so our nitrogen level in that manure is 25 pounds per thousand. So it's not like under pit manure. We and then the chicken manure we're putting out 3 tons per acre.
All right, perfect. And then one more question here. The back to the flaming, have you tried over the years doing more flaming or mowing between the rows or any other tillage cultivation alternatives, or have you just kind of
Haven't tried mowing. I mean, because you mow it, it grows back. I think. I don't know that mowing. We haven't. The weed zapper. He didn't mention that, but I know a lot of people really talk highly about it. To me, the weed zapper is kind of like you've already got a problem if your weeds are up over your crop. So, and it doesn't work real well in grass. And again, grass is just our biggest problem. Um, the flaming, I don't know. I just, uh, it's just more. I don't know if I want to just because it's more difficult shouldn't be why we don't do it. But I don't know if that's the key either to do more.
Sure. Well, I mean, it time consuming and manpower and acreage is
Yeah, the
obviously.
grass, it just doesn't. Um, if the grass is thick, it doesn't get it all either. And I know guys that flame when the crop's real small and they just love it. But I think they're having more of a broadleaf situation where they're killing that broadleaf and it doesn't come back. Um, so I don't know. That's just what we're
No,
doing.
no, it's perfect. Well, thank you so much, Scott, again for taking some time out of your day to share what's working on your farm. I think that's the most important thing that I've learned over the years is in these farmer to farmer learning opportunities. It's what's working on your farm, and take it and apply it.
Yep.
What works at your place. So again, thank you everyone for coming. Scott, thank you so much.
Okay. You're welcome. Thanks everybody for listening in.